Commanders, welcome to the Captain's Log. This is going to be a show where we do a deep dive into some of the many people that work on Star Trek Fleet Command. We want to give you more of an insight into who we are and what this game is all about. With me today is David Eckleberry. David, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I'm proud to be on the first Captain's Log. I'm really looking forward to all of them to come.
Thank you. Is this your first time here in San Diego attending Comic-Con?
No, I'm afraid not. I love Comic-Con. I don't know how many years ago, maybe like 15 or so was my first Comic-Con, so long ago that I don't honestly remember it. I used to come down just for fun and being a fan, but then many times working across the games industry in my history, I've been sent here to like show off cool video games and do little panel talks and things like that. So San Diego was a lot of fun. It's gotten so big though. I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
I guess that's the trite thing to say, but I remember it was like, maybe 5,000 or 10,000 people, and now it's like just a sea of humanity is Comic-Con.
Would you say you've done more working Comic-Cons or professional or personal Comic-Cons in your lifetime at this point?
Now I'm afraid it's more professional.
More
right?
professional?
Yeah, I mean like a lot of like standing on the show floor and demoing working software. That's been a lot of my time at Comic-Con, just like Xbox showcase events, the E3 sort of things. Yeah.
One of the downsides of working in the gaming industry, unfortunately, you no longer get to attend all the cool things you normally would.
It's very true.
So David, for people who might not know who you are or first time doing this show, could you give a little insight of who you are and how you're involved with Star Trek Fleet Command?
Of course. So I'm David Eckleberry. I am the general manager of Star Trek Fleet Command.
Okay.
Ultimately, that kind of means that all of the many people we have working on the game, game designers, engineers, artists, UI artists, everything, and I'm forgetting all these wonderful titles, and my staff's going to kill me when I get home if they see this, but it's more than 200 people now.
That's a lot.
It's grown a great deal over the time that I've been with the game, which is now 5 years. So I just hit my 5-year anniversary working on Star Trek, which means that I was here before launch, and now I've been here for the ride after it, and it's been an amazing ride. Yeah.
That's a long time. So speaking of, you've been here working on Star Trek Fleet Command for 5 years. Mm-hmm. How long have you been in the gaming industry, like, total?
Let's see.
Give or take.
It's 2022, so that means 27 years.
27 years.
Yeah.
I was 4 when you started your career in gaming.
Now I feel old. Thank you.
And I hope to look as good as you whenever I get to your age.
Thank you.
So going back to when you were 4, you this time, did you always imagine yourself working in the gaming industry? Because I remember when I was a kid, I was like, no shot I'm ever working in gaming, right? Like, it was like a far-out dream.
I mean, no, I didn't. I mean, I didn't even know what working in gaming would have meant, right? I would have been, I don't know, when very young, playing on my Atari 2600 and playing Dungeons and Dragons, the kind of paper board game, card game, and and playing with all my friends, and I loved games, right? I would make up my own board games, and I was a terrible programmer, so it was mostly board and kind of card stuff that I was making, and I went to university fully with the intent of like going to be a lawyer and something awful like that.
Really?
I know, I'm sorry.
How long were you doing lawyer school for? Before you did you finish? Are you a lawyer?
I am not a lawyer. I don't take my legal advice.
Okay.
I applied to law school, was accepted, but after that, I didn't go. I had friends that I had made in the games industry, and they were making like I just mentioned, that Dungeons and Dragons game, working for a small company called TSR in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, kind of middle of nowhere in the U.S.
Got to hang out in Wisconsin.
I know, scenic, very chilly Wisconsin. But I'd done some freelance work, and they convinced me, some colleagues that I had met there, some friends in the game space convinced me to go work there. And I originally thought it was just going to be, do games for a year, maybe 2, defer your kind of law school corporate life.
Yeah.
But obviously now I never looked back. I've worked across all kinds of different genres of games, different formats. Like I said, originally kind of physical games. But then around 5 or 6 years after that, I transitioned to working on video games. And I've been making now video games for, I guess, 20 or so years.
What was the first game you worked on? This is actually not even a question I wrote down. I'm just curious.
The first
video game.
So the first video game that I worked on was Dungeons and Dragons Online and Lord of the Rings Online for a company called Turbine.
That's cool.
So I was making PC MMOs.
Wow.
Yeah.
So gaming industry, was going to be a lawyer, accepted to law school, said, heck no, gonna work in video games instead. And you are currently living in Dublin.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah, wasn't always. I'm not natively Irish. This is not an Irish accent. But I moved. I was working here for the company in LA area in Santa Monica for a couple of years, and then talked about it. Most of the development team, most of you know, is centered in Dublin. It's centered many places now in the world of remote living and working that we have.
Yeah.
But the original development team was all in Dublin, Ireland. And so, yeah, about 2 years ago, I made the decision to be a part of that, development house, to join Digit officially.
Yep.
And I've been there for a couple winters and 1.5 summers now.
So basically 2 winters.
2 winters. Yeah, that's okay.
So how was the transition from, living in the United States to living in Dublin? A big culture shock, big differences, or?
A little bit. I mean, I was doing a lot of travel before that to work with both sides of that studio. And so I used to hop on a plane every 8 or 12 weeks or so to spend time there. So I knew the Dublin area fairly well. And to be honest, with COVID and the pandemic that we've all mostly gotten through now, I went from quarantining in California, getting on a plane with my family and moving to Dublin, to quarantining in Dublin, right? Now that's, now mostly over with, and we're starting to explore a little bit more. I like Dublin a lot, actually. It's the people are very friendly, and the more important thing is I get to spend more and more time with my team.
Right.
Not just on their time zone, but like getting in, spend some time with them in the office and doing creative meetings and summits and decision making, where we plan out the future of the game, and that's the real reason I moved there. Right?
Yeah.
Is I don't really know any Irish people that don't work for, Digit and Scopely. So the friends that I'm making in Ireland are mostly the friends that I used to see on a Zoom camera, and now I'm getting to spend time with them.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have really realized that you can still be very effective working from home, but you really miss out on that personal friendship angle if you're not in the same room as another
absolutely.
person.
You work on a team, and it's really important that your people trust you and you trust them.
Yep.
And there's no substitute for this kind of personal conversation, right? And for me, an old school kind of game designer, there's no substitute for getting 8 smart people in a room with a whiteboard and discussing the great ideas, the roadmap, or whatever we want to do to make the game better. It's just a little bit easier.
Is it
when we're
still
in person.
the whiteboard, or did you go to the glass windows where people can half see what you're writing and fancy?
I think we have both at the office, but and we of course have the tech solution. We have people dialing in over Zoom, and it's mural boards and things like that. But yeah, the old school way of doing it, there's whiteboards in every room pretty much. Yeah.
I'm gonna get David a chalkboard for Christmas if I ever get him your Secret Santa.
All right then.
So moving on to more Trek-related type of questions. So when you started working on Star Trek Fleet Command, were you already a Trek fan? Were you a budding Trek fan? How much did you know about the series?
Oh, I knew a lot. So for me growing up, this was before kind of the explosion of cable networks. There were a few, but at 11 o'clock at night when I was growing up, the local kind of independent affiliate station would air TOS. So this would have been kind of in the very late 70s or early 80s. So you could watch Kirk and Spock with all the glorious 60s special effects.
Oh, they were great.
They were amazing for their time. And yeah, that was my introduction. And so I watched, obviously all of those episodes late at night over and over and over again and getting familiar with it. I eventually started watching films. And then later when I was in high school, I started watching Next Generation, and through college, that series. I'd watched all of those episodes so many times that I can't remember the first time I watched them anymore, right?
Yeah.
And playing a little bit of Trek board games and other things, I knew Trek pretty well. And then when the opportunity presented itself to come work for the company, and I knew it was to work on Star Trek, that sounded amazing, and so here I am.
What's your favorite arc? You gotta pick one. I know.
Pick one.
You gotta pick one that's your go-to. Binge, you're on the couch sick, you're gonna watch some Star Trek.
I've been watching a lot of things now over Paramount Plus, and
Right.
that's a big change. But I think that this actually happened back in January. I had COVID. I'm fine, obviously, and I had my week from home. My wife had COVID, and we were sitting and binge watching Next Gen, and then we immediately rolled that over to DS9, and we just kind of did all of that era of shows. Inside of a week, I think, we had watched almost all of the kind of TNG to DS9 and, to Voyager arcs. And, that's literally watching Star Trek 13, 14 hours a day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it was glorious.
So it's a household of Trek fans.
It is. The kids are perhaps a little too young, but my wife and I definitely absolutely Trek fans.
That's
Have been
awesome.
forever.
So talking about Star Trek Fleet Command specifically, how you worked on, you were saying PC MMOs, you worked on Lord of the Rings Online. How is developing Star Trek Fleet Command different from some of the other games you've worked on? I'm sure you get that question all of the time.
Well, I mean, every game you ever work on is different, and if you have the privilege to work in the game industry, you fall in love with them, right? But I think the real thing that's different is, I've worked on PC MMOs, I've worked on some other mobile games. The pace of Star Trek is kind of its own special, unique butterfly, right? Where I've never worked on a game where we're putting out this much content, this many features, this fast, and this regularly.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean we get it perfect. Sorry, but it also and we're all a lot of times we're racing to the finish line to create the stuff for August or September or the next month to follow on the beats. But it's the pace of how much we're doing and how much commitment the company has to that, and just throwing more and more kind of resources to not only to do more, but to do it better. And that is a very different experience. Even when you're working on PC MMOs, the amount of stuff we do, I think one of the great reasons for Star Trek success has been since fairly early on, our kind of regular monthly content release schedule of putting out stuff, and not just one officer or something like that anymore. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I will definitely agree that there are some games that I'm really passionate about, but once you hit sort of that end game and you're done, if there's like 4 months of downtime and you get some new cosmetics, that's exciting, but it's not changing my experience in a way that is meaningful.
Yeah, and ultimately, look, we're making an entertainment, for our fans, right? And novelty has its own value. I love that our players play the game so very much, and many of them have been playing for so very long. We need to keep things fresh. We need to keep adding fun, new, exciting bits. And so we keep experimenting with more and more kinds of features of the game. And most of them are successful, a few of them aren't. But it's been a great privilege to see the game evolve from what I can remember now, 3.5 years ago. No armadas, no territory capture, no KVK, all those sorts of things that are now just part of the game.
So, talking about new features that just came out, Infinite Incursions is actually out now. And so, talking about all the different features and these new things that we're constantly doing in Star Trek Fleet Command, how is Infinite Incursions different? How is it this technical advancements? We've had server transfers forever. I'm, as a dumb community manager who doesn't know any code, and the community knows way more than I do, tech-wise. But for someone like me, how is it so impressive?
Well, I'm not a coder either. I took some programming courses a very long time ago, and the technical team very clearly says I'm not allowed to code.
They don't let you touch it.
No, not at all. My knowledge of C++ is well dead. And that's not even the language that the game is built in. But I think what you have to understand is that every server from a code point of view is its own little magical island. and the islands don't know about each other's existence. So it's fairly easy to take a player's file, right? Their base, their station, everything that defines everything about them in the game, Star Trek Fleet Command, and say, we're going to move it from this magical island to that magical island. But there are many things that we considered very important for Infinite Incursions. One is that you still wanted to be able to talk to your alliance. Well, now you're on your magical island, you can't talk to the other magical island.
Right.
We want you to stay, and have, leaderboards and events that are talking to both servers at the same time. We want you to be able to go back kind of fairly smoothly and nearly instantaneously. All that was technology that didn't exist. And so now you can think of it, if you're technical, sorry for this magical bullshit language. So if you're, do you want me to?
This podcast is rated M for mature.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all good.
All right. So if you're technically minded, this is kind of baby talk. But so now we've got these two islands. But the big thing is that we've got a new server layer that's sitting on top of the servers that allows them to communicate and do everything that we're doing now, and maybe some cool future things as well. There's just another layer that's sitting on top of the game and talking to the servers between them within our regions.
So it's not as simple as building a bridge from one island to the other island, essentially.
I mean, it is building a bridge, but it's more like building a super island that the islands are resting on top of. Well, come visit us on our magical islands.
It's the new attraction for Star Trek Fleet Command, Magical Islands, coming in 2023.
Maybe.
All right. Going into the future of Star Trek Fleet Command. Are we going to see DS9 and Voyager?
Yes.
When?
No.
Got it. So yes to Deep Space Nine and Voyager, no to...
I'm not telling you yet. Yeah, we're really excited about the future. There's so much more Star Trek to enjoy. You know, obviously different television arcs that we haven't enjoyed yet, different parts of that IP, and obviously new ones like Strange New Worlds that we're going to be occasionally enjoying. And there's more film stuff to enjoy too that we'll eventually approach. And then, you know, we'll keep doing original stuff in between and keep mixing things up. All of those are certainly on our list, but I don't want to ruin the surprise.
All right, you heard it here first. It is coming. When? No, is the date. So...
Soon, coming soon.
Talking about the future a little bit more of Star Trek Fleet Command, this is going to be sort of the cherry on top of this interview. And again, thank you so much, David, for being here and doing this with us. What are you most excited about for the future of Star Trek Fleet Command? There's so much stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't tell us right now. There's even some stuff that I can't talk about yet. But this isn't the end. Like, it's not like Star Trek Fleet Command is going anywhere like next month.
Well, I hope it is. I hope it's going somewhere exciting.
No, sorry. I mean, like it's going to vanish and disappear, and it's going to the player base is going to go away, and there's no new content.
No, not at all. Look, at every point in our history of developing Star Trek Fleet Command and enjoying the experience with our players, we've looked at it from both an entertainment vehicle, are there cool new creative stories to tell? And from a business perspective, that Scopely keeps investing into it and keeps increasing the number of people associated with it, keeps spending more on the kind of marketing and to bring more players to it. We have, throughout all of its history, continued to increase those investments. There are more people today working on Star Trek Fleet Command than there ever have been in the past. And I have some open head count, visit our website. And to continue to make those investments in making the game better. That's not going anywhere. And I am really excited. You know, I don't get, you know, I'm not doing the individual game design myself. I'm not writing the stories myself. So for me, you know, like getting to read and the narrative team's stories, and that's part of my joy too, as a player and as a developer. And so I don't know everywhere that the game is going to go, but I do know that it's going to be really bright. You know, I like the roadmap that we've built for, you know, the next 6 to 9 months that we've kind of written in pencil. We're going to have a meeting in another couple of months where we extend that further to the, you know, the next kind of 18 months from today, you know. A lot of the technical work takes a while. So there's work that begins that is kind of incubation-y or experimental. And we don't know everywhere that it's going to lead. But also, we write a lot of it in pencil because we have great ideas for some, you know, pretty big features. But as we play the game and as our players give us feedback, we change the roadmap. Right. We figure out what the game most needs, and sometimes that, you know, the Lego bricks of like, when are we going to release this? This moves over here and that goes over there because we need something different than what we thought we needed 6 months ago. So it's a dialogue is one way to put it. You know, the game doesn't exist without the players, and what we build is kind of meant to be a conversation with our players, an evolution with them of how to make the game better.
Yeah, so there is a lot of times when we'll have stuff on the roadmap, you're saying, where we have an idea and then based on what we're hearing back from the players, we'll pivot.
Yeah, we'll delay it or kill it, and you know, it hates to, none of the development team hates to work on something, you know, blood, sweat of their tears, and then see it go away. So most of the time it's like, okay, we have something we want to do first.
Right.
Or, hey, we are going to still build that feature, but you know, we need to add this, you know, bit of sauce onto it to make it better and to make it work with the fans and what their concerns are today.
Awesome. Well, David, that's all the questions I have. I want to thank you so much for literally hopping off of a plane from Dublin, and first thing before anything is sitting down here and speaking with me and the community as a whole. This has been the Captain's Log. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.